What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 228. We are talking why save restaurants with the one and only Andrew Zimmern. This is episode 2 of Best Served Together, where we're focused on the work of the Independent Restaurant Coalition. We spoke with Shanita McAfee Bryant. We'll also have Nina Compton, Bobby Stuckey, and Caroline Glover on as part of this ongoing series on Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern will be the regular scheduled time. Want to bring Andrew Zimmern in to speak with us. Andrew, thanks for being on.
My pleasure.
All right. So why save restaurants is what we want to focus on. And we like to take people back, right? I feel like when you find your tribe, when you find restaurants, it really crystallizes kind of this. The tribe, as your very good friend Anthony Bourdain coined it, pirates on the pirate ship. We find our people. And so I want to take you back down memory lane a little bit. Your first job in the industry. When did you catch that hospitality bug? When did it start for you?
Summer of 1975. I went to my father in May and I said I needed a raise in my allowance. And he laughed. And I said, I'm not going to get a raise. He says, no, you're not getting any allowance. He says, allowances for little kids. Go get yourself a job. And I had a lot of friends that were working for local landscaping companies and things like that, hauling wheelbarrows of dirt and doing the kind of stuff that high school kids do during summers for jobs. Other people were working at fast fooders and stuff like that. And I wanted to spend the day at the beach, swimming, hanging out with my friends, talking to girls, doing what teenagers do. And I wanted to be at night. I wanted a job in a restaurant. I felt I had been cooking long enough with my family, had convinced them of my passion, had done my enrollment work with my parents, and they let me go talk to my godmother, Irene Gould, who owned a restaurant in East Hampton, Long Island called The Quiet Clam, which was a little roadside seafood clam shack that inside had 10, 12, 14 tables where they were doing what for then was more upscale seafood cookery, a sauteed piece of striped bass with some sort of, ginger beurre blanc and some local sliced tomatoes. I mean, this is in the 70s. It was just very simple farmhouse cooking, native Long Island ingredients, everything from the farm stand next door, everything from their seafood purveyors, which in those days were the actual fishermen. And just she was German. Her partner was from Rhode Island. And together they had a love for European cookery. So a little bit of that snuck in there, but very, very basic stuff. And I worked there summers for the next that year and for the next 3 years after that. And I knew, right away. Oh yeah. Well, I knew it before I got there, but night number one, service is up. I was chopping and cleaning vegetables, all day long, and then service starts, and I swung over to the garde manger section where the shucking area was, and because I was good at shucking, they're like, put the kid on that. No one else wanted to do it, and I loved it, and that became, pretty much my whole first year there was prep all afternoon and then shuck all evening, but then help wherever you could. If there were no orders on the slide for clams or oysters, I just gravitated over to somewhere where somebody needed help. And it was everything that I had always wanted. The camaraderie, the theater of it, the romantic allure of an ice cold gin and tonic, sweating from the outside. It was so cold as the glass crossed the dining room floor to a guest. You could see everything in what was then an open kitchen, an unintentional open kitchen. So really, it had me lock, stock, and barrel at the beginning. I think what was the most appealing part of the restaurant job for me was the people. I've come full circle. Now I'm 59 years old, and the most important things in the world are not money and awards and great meals and cars, and I mean the most important thing in the world are people. And that's what grabbed me at the beginning of my restaurant career, and that's where I sit right now at this point in my restaurant career. It's 1,000% all about the people. In those days, and it's fascinating actually, I fell in love with the people who worked there before I fell in love with the customers. Then I went through a period in the middle of my career where everything was about the customer. Right. And the last 15, 20 years of my career, everything is about let's put the customer second. And I don't mean that I'm a customer as often. I eat out a lot. So I'm a perpetual dinner guest and restaurant goer professionally on camera and off camera. Okay. I still want to be second. If a business can't take care of its own people, they have nothing to offer me as a guest. So it's very simple sort of mathematics for me. I also think that first job turned me on to a very important idea, which was that we have defined restaurants by a financial transaction. Business buys goods, preps and cares for goods, hires people to prepare those goods, serve those goods. Those goods then have a charge tacked onto them. Yep. Customer buys those goods, small little difference goes back into owner's pocket. And we talk about, the 18th century origin of restaurants, which is a bunch of white Western European myth making, right? Restaurants have been in existence for as long as human beings have gathered. Evidence of them in 5th century Japan, in the ryokans there, in the ashes of Pompeii, there are restaurants preserved. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. So restaurants have existed since the dawn of time. If you define it as a financial transaction, it is for sure at least 3,000 years old. However, I don't define it as a financial transaction anymore. Restaurants to me are defined by an emotional transaction. And if you go to that emotional transaction, it actually goes all the way back to the beginning of human civilization, when you first, as a hungry person, came into my cave. I had food and empathy and fed you. And there was an emotional transaction there. And I believe that's why we have this love affair with restaurants. I think our love of food and our love of restaurants and of communing together over food, however a culture does that, is proof positive that a restaurant is defined by an emotional transaction and not a financial one.
Andrew, you are such a pure storyteller, a natural storyteller. I love it. So what you're talking about is the purest form of hospitality, just taking care of another human being. And to your point, we so often do a good job of the butts and seats, taking care of them, and we don't take care of each other and our guests, right? And you mentioned something I think it's important. We're in the relationship business. We forget about the internal relationships because it's not what's on the plate. It's who gets to the plate that truly matters. So I really am grateful to hear you say that. And so now when we're in this moment where it is clear that we have gotten far too transactional in our understanding of a restaurant, to your point, and restaurants now are struggling. The business model has been, exposed in some degrees. It's very vulnerable, and the people that work within it are hyper vulnerable. And so we want to save them. That's what we really are focused on, is like how we save the businesses to empower the people.
And in so doing, you create the new business model.
That's it.
If you try to create the new business model first, you're going about it backwards. That doesn't mean some people won't be successful doing it that way. Some will. But if you take care of the human component first and repair that brittle lack of equity and access, the business model will take care of itself.
It is the business model, right? It's the relationship. We're in the business model of taking care of humans. And if we do a good job of that, to your point, internally, you take care of your people, they take care of your guests, the guest comes back. Like that's how you
I'll even be a little more, I'll be a little more specific. Even if and I don't want to get too far afield here, but let us say that you have a cooperative approach to restaurant building, okay? And I give everyone in there, everyone gets a point in the, let's say I'm the guy that creates it, designs, whatever. I raise some money, I do it, I open this restaurant, and then I take my shares and dilute that, right? So that everyone's making a better wage, everyone has a say, you vest into the company in certain ways. There's always going to be transient workers, right?
Right.
So, which is fine. That's one of the great beauties of the restaurant and why it employs so many vulnerable populations, is because there's work there for transient people. Yes. And so, who, by the way, deserve a job as much as those that are in transient. So we design this restaurant. I now have reduced myself from, I'll just make it up, 48% of it, because I leveraged myself to raise some dollars, to 25% of it, right? But I've taken those other 23 points and I've distributed them amongst the staff. And in perpetuity, as long as they are there, they are yours until we have a check event. And I let the employees and I decide cooperatively, the way a co-op operates with an elected board, et cetera, to make the decision-making about how the restaurant goes. The minute you do that, you are taking what is perceived as a huge risk. Some find it an untenable risk. I disagree. Yeah. You take that risk and you put the decision-making in the hands of, I'm just gonna make it up, 15 people instead of 2. And you make it transparent. It takes place at a staff meeting instead of behind closed doors. So everyone in the restaurant is then enrolled and on the same team, truly on the same team. I never have to worry about walking around and telling a wait assistant or someone, hey, that cupboard needs dusting, because someone else has already done it, because they've already walked by it before I did, right? Yep. We all have the same goal, right? But what's really, really key is that at the end of that first week, when we all sit down, instead of it's me and my accountant and he says, God, but the menu prices have to go up because rent is up and food costs is up and it's winter and sales are down. The whole team knows that. And the whole team, 20 heads are better than 1 or 2, can then make that informed decision about the best way to go. And when you do that, you then open yourself up to a greater range of solutions. Some may work better than others, but you're going to have a greater range of solutions. And I've had that exact same experience in other businesses. I've had that exact same experience working on nonprofits in places where 20 people really are making the decisions. People are really afraid of this cooperative decision-making in restaurants, or this co-op style, because no one's really done it before. I shouldn't say that. A handful of places have done it before. But I look at corporate boardrooms and let people know all the time, why do you think General Electric is doing so well, or Johnson & Johnson? The line where there is a key group of 40 people in the C-suite and 20 people on a board, 60 who make all the decisions, right? They don't go to you and me, junior folks way down here, and say, make the decision. We're worker bees. So what if in a restaurant you had those 20, or maybe you're a big restaurant and you're able to give more points and enroll more people in your co-op. But if you just had 20 people making the decisions, we're going to make really, really good decisions. And I think then my 25% that I've held on to, instead of me bringing 6-7 points to the bottom line and squeezing 6% in profit out of the restaurant, pretty much I have to put almost all that in to the business to keep it going every year. Okay. So essentially, as the owner, I'm lucky if I'm not taking a draw from the payroll and performing some function in it, those first 5-8 years, I may not be making any money at all.
Yep.
And if a restaurant lasts 15 years, those back 5 or 8 years, I may not be taking a draw at all as it begins to sunset, right? So what if my 25% became twice as valuable because of the business we were doing, the consistency that we were doing, The huge cost of training people that's a massive cost that no one talks about in restaurants, falls away because our employee retention is higher. I truly think that, and it is going to be different for everyone. It's going to vary from state to state and style of restaurant. It's not a one size fits all approach. But if you research the restaurants that are being run in a co-op fashion and adopt those principles for your own business ventures, I believe you have a tremendous chance to be more successful. We know conclusively that what was working before does not work. The restaurants were too brittle. It was too brittle a social construct. We weren't taking care of our people. We're undervaluing. We were discriminating. We were sexualizing. We were not profitable. Go try to raise money for a restaurant. I mean, I wish more people had that experience. I've done it a lot in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It is amazing with certain groups of investors, as the restaurateurs, you try to defend the indefensible.
Yes.
Give me all your money. Maybe you'll make money. Maybe you won't. Everything else that I invest in, they come in there and they say, here's how you're going to make your money.
Yep.
That's it. Now, it may not come true. Circumstances, someone else invents a better widget a year from now. We all lose our shorts. But they tell me how I'm going to make my money. In the restaurant world, it's a very specious argument. So I think an honest appraisal of where we've gotten tells us that we've not been successful in many ways. This is our opportunity with everything burnt to the ground. I wish that we had been able to rebuild our industry brick by brick in our own fashion. We didn't have that opportunity. The cultural pandemic and the viral pandemic have wreaked havoc with our industry and have nearly destroyed it. So and I believe we are going to get a chance to build it back. As we do so, if we choose not to do it the right way, we're morons. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is the definition of insanity. Now is the time for us to correct everything in our industry. Everything was burnt to the ground.
Yep.
Let's plant the right seedlings. Let's put things in the sun that deserve sun, in the shade that deserves shade. Prioritize human beings over everything else, and we will be successful.
That's Andrew, you have literally crystallized like 7 of the thesis that is the fundamental basis of this show. I could not be more grateful to you. True professionals is what we need in this industry, and it takes the investment and the creativity to be able to. We actually have a model where we're focused on 2 outcome goals for the industry. Number 1, to invert the 73% turnover rate to 75% employee retention and satisfaction. And number 2 is to be able to sustain at flow state a 19% net profit. We're saying fuck COVID-19, 19% net profit for restaurants, so that they have an opportunity to actually be equitable, profitable, and sustainable. Yet the first pillar is the people. You can't change the model of the profit until you change the model of investing in people, so that this is the dream that I have. And I couldn't accomplish it as a chef, as a restaurant owner, of being the 65-year-old line cook, getting ready to retire because our industry invested in them putting 2.5 kids through college, the gold watch and the pension, all of the things that other industries and career paths allow you the opportunity. That's what we need to invest in. And that's why I appreciate what you're talking about. And that is the part of restaurants that #SaveRestaurants is worth saving.
It's a fascinating thing too, because if you actually do the study, if you do the work and you dig in and you say, well, how do I have someone who works on the line as a cook? Maybe they rise up to sous chef, right? And maybe that's as far as it goes. But someone who has a 20-year career in your kitchen and then wants to retire. He or she did a bunch of other jobs prior to age 40, and then onward to 20 years with you at age 60, and then wants to move on with the next piece of their lives. If you want them to be able to retire with something that is of value, you, by its very nature, have to use some form of the co-op business model. Yes. You have to. It's impossible to keep giving them a 3, 4, 5% raise every year and health benefits and paid sick leave and increase their number of paid vacation weeks, which, by the way, is the model in all of my other businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the model that makes sense for business.
That's exactly right. So if I can do it for the other businesses, why can't I do it for restaurants? And the dirty secret is this, and you hit the nail on the head. I have a marketing business, a production company, and a hospitality company. Within that hospitality company, one of the things that we own is some restaurants. Restaurants are the only ones where we don't have a minimum financial, prior to COVID-19, a minimum financial profit margin to reach. And it's the only one where we did not have, previous to COVID-19, did not have the areas for advancement and opportunity and job protection that we do in the other businesses. My production company is fascinating because I have full-time employees and I have a lot of part-time employees. That's the very nature of the production company, right? A new show comes in, we have a group that works on it. They don't want to be full-time employees. They are literally freelance videographers, freelance sound engineers, freelance editors. That allows them to work on several projects at the same time in some cases, and allows them to make more money, feed their families. It's the way the industry works. In that mix and in those differences in terms of what you get as a freelancer or a full-timer, right, is one of those co-op secrets. We have very, very clear guidelines for profit margin. If something is not going to deliver us the 20 plus profit margin, we simply don't do the deal. So if there's a restaurant project, you have to know that business model is going to give you a minimum of 20%. You said 19 point something, same thing, right? Yeah. It's either going to give us that profit margin or not, because it's that difference between 20% and 6, 7, 8% that is the difference between success and failure. And if that means certain models of restaurateuring fall by the wayside, never to appear again, well, other people can choose to do them. I just don't think they're going to be successful in the 2020s.
So this is the model, the cooperative, the type of restaurant, the evolution, not just an incremental, different color lipstick on the same pig, a new model starting with the human capital. So all in on that. Why then are you putting so much of your weight into the Independent Restaurant Coalition, MSNBC, you're on there speaking, you're bringing in these voices, so important to you, because clearly saving restaurants is important as long as we recognize that we have to do something new. So what is the call to action for the Save Restaurants initiative?
Well, I love restaurants. I've grown up in restaurants. I've never, since 1975, I've never not been involved in a restaurant my entire life. It's the one continuum. I love food people above all other people. If it's food people in recovery, I love them the best, because those are, if you give me someone who spent their life in food and they're a recovering addict and alcoholic that's active in their recovery, I think that's the coolest kind of human being that exists. It's a very, very, very unique skill set that human being has. But the key for me is that I know how to look at things through the lens of food, and I've spent my life in food. So it's the divining rod that I know best. It's the modus operandi for me that I am most fluent in. It's my love language is food, right? So I'm going to start there with whatever my solutions are, because I know it best, as opposed to like biochemistry, which I know nothing of, right? There's a biochemical solution to things, I'm sure, but I just have no idea. I don't even know where to start. Give me a food magnifying glass to look at something more closely, or ask me to come up with a food solution to a non-food problem. I can do it. Right. I can do it every time, because that's where my literacy level is highest, is in food. With restaurants, it rises to an even greater threshold, and that is this: we are at a very dangerous and precipitous time in our country's history. We are in the middle of a hinge event that we have not seen the likes of since the 1860s and the election that year for Lincoln and the subsequent war between the states. We are at, and I'm not saying we're going to have a civil war. I'm just saying this is the biggest hinge event since then. It is bigger than World War II. It is bigger than World War I. It is, you have to go back to the middle of the 19th century in America to see an event where history has the chance to hinge, go this way or stay. It is, we are there. This is it. Politically, economically, civically, environmentally, medicinally, health and wellness, international affairs. You name it. This is 2020 is the year that will be looked back on hundreds of years from now in history books. So what is it that we can do to affect change, right? Well, that's policy on Capitol Hill. So that's why 30, 40 of us got on a bunch of calls and emails in late February, early March of this year and started the Independent Restaurant Coalition. Several of us had been having conversations for years that it was really, we were trying to fill a bucket with holes in it with cups of water at a time to try to cure hunger by doing galas and do dinners and get people to spend 40 grand to have 3 chefs cook dinner for 8 people. That's great. But it wasn't making real change. Real change came about by working with legislators in city, state, and federal government. We needed to change laws. If we wanted it to be unacceptable that there be hungry people in America, then we have to have laws behind that provide for those people to get fed who need it, who are below the safety net. So just hunger is an example, right? But economically, when you look at the independent restaurant industry, it's one of my restaurants. It's a pizza place on Main Street in rural Minnesota. It's a small bar and grill tavern in a little town in South Dakota that's seasonal. They get some business in the summer with tourists. They get some business in the fall with the hunters coming into town. And then basically they're feeding the locals, right?
Yeah.
And all those restaurants in between. And by the way, it's also the white tablecloth restaurants like the great restaurant at Meadowood that just burnt to the ground, right? So it's all of these restaurants are independent restaurants. Taken individually and alone, there's very little power or empathy building there outside of their own community. Some restaurants, like the restaurant at Meadowood, earn an international reputation, but only a small segment of people can even afford to dine there, right? Then you have these restaurants like the humble little bar and grill or the pizza parlor that I just named, but unless you're in those communities or passing through, you're never going to rub up against them. The good news is most of us have a place like that either in our memory bank or in our neighborhoods now, so we can develop some empathy for it. But when you take those 630,000 businesses, those independent restaurants, and you join them together and you take a look at them and you take a snapshot of them, you see an industry that represents about 5% of GDP, is the second or third largest business in the country. It depends on whose data you look at, either second or third. We are, I believe, second only to the United States government in terms of the number of people that we employ. A lot of people put healthcare at number 2, but that's incorporating so many different aspects of healthcare. It's really an apple and an orange. But even if we're third behind the U.S. government and healthcare, okay, so we're the third largest entity, financial economic engine in America, independent restaurants. That's massive. Depending on who studies you pay attention to, we're either as few as 11 million or as many as 15 million employees. What is 100% accurate is that we are the number one industry month over month since the first days of COVID on the unemployment roll when it comes to a pillar of or genre of industry. The hospitality workers in restaurants are still the largest segment of the unemployed, right? So what's vital for us if we want to kickstart our economic engine, which is in every American's best interest, we have to provide financial relief by passing the Restaurants Act. And right now, the Restaurants Act is sitting smack dab in the middle of Nancy Pelosi's current HEROES Act version 2.0.
Yep.
It was passed by Congress last week. Looks like in 2 weeks, when Senate is back in session, they're going to be getting another look at that. Everyone from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to now the head of Trump's Fed have come out in favor of this. It is bipartisan. Yes. Because it is about jobs and the economy, there's a lot of bipartisan love for this federal relief program.
As there should be.
Well, of course there should be, because like SNAP, food stamps, puts more money into our economy than it takes out. Sure, it costs $750 billion a year, right, but it puts about $850 billion back in. There are some relief packages that actually do that. This package, if we do not give restaurants the relief, and we will see then, not just my opinion, the opinion of many others, but I've said it loud, early, and often, there will be an extinction event of restaurants. Yes. Some people are predicting as much as 85%. I'm thinking, I do the math, I'm thinking more about 75 to 70%. Either way, unconscionable, irreversible, 10 million people plus unemployed, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of commerce lost, and the taxes they pay gone. And the people who are working in those restaurants, we're the number one employer of single mothers, the number one employer of returning citizens, top 2 employer of immigrants. These are people, number one employer of first-time job seekers. So these people are not going to find a job working at the investment bank tomorrow. It is absolutely vital and necessary that we get that bill passed in the Senate and get the backstopping for the independent restaurant community, because that $120 billion, if we don't get it, will cost $250 billion in year one. And that's according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. According to other independent studies, it's as much as $270 billion. But everybody is in that, 260 plus or minus 7-8%, right, in billions of dollars. So the number is real.
Yes. It
is staggering. It's not, can we afford to help independent restaurants? We can't afford not to.
Yeah. Everybody, saverestaurants.com is in the comments. You need to take 20 seconds of your time to go and make sure that your representatives know how important this is to you, because we know, as always, we say on the show, restaurants are fundamentally the pillars of both culture and commerce in their communities. It is time to invest in the people and those engines of commerce, so that the 16-year-old Andrew Zimmern of the future has an opportunity to go work there.
Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, here's the fascinating thing. And yes, www.saverestaurants.com. We have a widget there for people to email their senators. It's vital.
Yes.
And folks who are still learning about this, there's a lot of information there, a lot of cool links, a lot of great articles, a lot of great wisdom on that website. We're always talking about independent restaurants, and we do like to make sure that we have single-mindedness of purpose, right? If I start talking about other businesses, my message is diluted. But now that I've made the case for independent restaurants, let me remind everyone that there are hundreds of other small business categories that are helped by this same HEROES Act.
Yes.
That are also in the same boat, right? Do I care about the shoe stores of America as much as restaurants, independent restaurants? No, just being honest, I don't.
Yeah.
Are they just as important? And do I need to care about them because of what they represent? Abso-fucking-lutely, right? Yes. These are all small businesses trying to do their best. One of the other reasons that restaurants are important is for all the people on the backside of the supply chain, pickers, planters, foragers, harvesters, wine companies, towel companies, laundry companies, architects, designers. I mean, it is another $1 trillion worth of businesses and entities that are putting their products through a restaurant. And because we talked about this before, some restaurants are making as little as 5, 6, 7%. That's the national average in independent restaurants. So some are lower, some are higher. We're a pass-through business. We spit all this money out, which is an amazing thing. But we're also the holder of trust taxes, liquor taxes, sales taxes. So it's very important for our municipalities to have our tax base, to have people spending their money in restaurants, because we're paying more in taxes than that ridiculous amount of money that was given to the cruise ship industry that pays no taxes, only employs 20 some odd thousand people, and they're all those companies are based in offshore banks. Are you kidding me? This is a 11th hour common sense Hail Mary, but we have some extra receivers in the game. We have more receivers than defensive backs. We just need everyone's help pulling along and making this a reality.
That's it. I'm inspired. I'm fired up. We're going to continue this storyline. Andrew, thank you so much. One of the things that I'm really, really focused on is I want to know that restaurants, the future, the restaurant that we all believe in, that we can create through the cooperative model that you mentioned, is there for my 2 young sons. I would love to not have to say,
how old are they?
Go be a chef. 6 and 4.
Oh, they should be out working in the food business right now.
They're my little sous chefs for sure. And I want to end on this because family is so important. And we talk about family in restaurants, and we are this dysfunctional band of rebels, island misfit toys. Again, the pirates on the pirate ship. And my son heard about you and your show and says he goes around the world and eats strange things. And he's like, ask him, Dad, if he's ever eaten a capybara when he was in South America. So that is my question for you to end this.
Yes.
Okay.
And they are delicious.
For anybody who doesn't know, a South American oversized guinea pig, basically. That is how we're going to end this show, because we're restaurant people.
In my defense, so that we don't both get lots of letters, capybaras in their regions are not endangered.
Right.
Only native people in the far reaches of the Amazon really do eat them, because it's impossible to find. They're not just roaming around cities. You can't domesticate them, blah, 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 blah. I've eaten them several times. Time of year is really important. When the date palms are giving off their fruit, a lot of people take a capybara, because they're not that fast, and they put them in a pen after they catch them, and they just feed them on date palms. So they're basically finished for like a month on sweet, sugary fruit. And the meat is extraordinary. They are absolutely delicious, and it's roasted whole like a piglet, and they are superb.
Unbelievable. They are the Iberico hogs finished on acorns of the Amazon.
By all means.
That could have been a weird, awkward question. You turned it into a brilliant ending to this show. Thank you so much. That's what we want. We want the future hospitalitarians to have the opportunity to work in restaurants. So thank you so much for that. Andrew, we're going to let you go. Really appreciate your time.
Take care, Chef. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Have a good one. All right, everybody. Wow. What an amazingly inspired conversation. Just truly a strong voice and leader for our industry. Natural storyteller, just the kind of person that we need, like really out there championing, and we have to take care of the people. That is the biggest takeaway. It is always the takeaway. We are always focused on what else? Unsung hospitality heroes. They are the bedrock of this show. They are who we are trying to connect with and support at every single moment. That's why we are on every single day trying to share those stories, hopefully have an impact. So once again, saverestaurants.com, go. If you're one of the 11 to 15 million people, go. It's the opportunity that we have to make sure that everybody in government knows that this matters to us. And if you are at large, somebody who is a lover of restaurants because they are, again, pillar of culture and commerce in your community, you also need to take that moment and show your support. And then beyond that, we need to start to invest in people and shift this model now. The opportunity is now. And I appreciate you all for tuning in. Appreciate Andrew Zimmern and his team for, allowing us the opportunity. Thank you so much. As always, cheers.